Is there other things, Leon, that you would like the North American Millets Alliance to help promote or research? Or, I mean, we're just a scattered board, but we are out here to try to support people like you.
Well, the biggest thing the millet needs is more markets, and that's a tough one because the millet right now, the complex of millet uh, is pretty inelastic. If you in the whole industry where see Northeast Colorado and Southwest Nebraska, the Panhandle produce 80 to 90% of the proso millet in the United States,
Mhm.
and if we get an extra 500, 1,000 acres, the market might go down 50 cents. And so that's a tough one. Um, I don't know where to start that. Some people say start on the mark on the product end, try to get more products developed. Um, Sometimes people will say, well, maybe you have to go to the people who buy the buyers and convince them to offer better prices. Um, and it's an interesting market when you get into it because a lot of times if you're trying to move regular domestic proso millet, uh, a um, a broker will call and you'll tell them what you think you need, and they'll say, "Oh no, we can't do that. That's way too high." And a lot of people will say, "Well, okay, well we can go lower," but a lot of times if you stick with it, they'll call you back in a couple of days and take some.
Well,
So
what I've noticed when the millet price during COVID got extremely high because of production issues and actually use, and I travel a lot, and I look at bird foods. And what happened is the bird food industry switched to wheat, any kind of cheap wheat, cracked corn, and Milo, yeah, red Milo, in bird food mixes. And they tried to push that at market prices into these retail shops. And, unless you're trying to attract wild turkeys and pigeons and squirrels, it's just not the songbird type of feed. And so, what I see just in the last year for sure, more in the last 6 to 8 months, is they're actually putting millet back into those bird feed bins and blends and making it a consumer and bird uh, palatable and looking food again.
mhm. And it could be, maybe education to the consumer because, like you mentioned there, the red Milo. Well, they put that in there because they like the composition of Milo as a food, and the red color is for the consumer. It's not for the bird.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
and a white Milo actually is better, but
Well,
they don't like that.
no, no, my recommendation has been, and it's been for years, is that 85% white proso with 5% foxtail. This is wild bird food, and the
Hmm.
balance being sunflower, black oilseed sunflower.
Yeah, and because if you go out in the wild and look to see what the birds are really looking at, uh, that works. I know the people in town with the backyard feeders. Some of them complain when there's a lot of proso in the feed that, well, the birds just scratch it out on the ground. That's the way they eat it. They're ground feeders,
Right.
and a common house sparrow, English sparrow, you watch them and that's what they do. They sit there and they will scratch, they pick up one, they crack it, and then they kick the hull out on the ground. And so I think a person has to go that way and to get them to do that more because I don't know. I've sold market millet from $3 a hundred all the way to $42 a hundred.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know that when it was real high in those few years there, that was just about 2 years is all that was,
Uh-huh.
uh, that the bird food market slowed down. They still sold it. And that did, and of course, that could be all the other things. The economy could have been better, had a tough winter. And so people think they have to feed, and
Yeah.
that's fine.
Yep. I agree with you. We need, well, every market needs to be making some money, and you just can't raise it just because it works in a good rotation. There has to be economic benefits for the following crop or for cash wise, and not everybody has capacity to store millet. But as you mentioned, Kansas, or I brought up Kansas, they don't have a lot of on-farm storage. They just harvest
No.
and go straight to the rail terminals usually, and so millet
Mhm.
is not that kind of product.
Yeah. And
I don't know how long you can stay with us, Leon. I got another kind of question here. You're selling seed to various parts of the world, and you're selling the waxy proso to Asian markets. But for the regular proso millet, is it nationwide what you're selling to, or is there a regional concentration?
for just regular proso millet, when we have extra like that, it goes to the local market, to the local elevator, and their market, I would say, is 95 to 100% bird food.
I see. Okay. All right.
And then, like Pennington has a pretty good sized plant down here in Sidney, Nebraska. They also have their plants in the south, and so I think that is the market. At one time, there was a small market for pigs. They would grind it into pig feed
Okay.
and use it that way. Another market, which is even smaller, but it's a market, would be for sheep and goats. Sheep and goats love it.
All right. Yeah. At some point, I'd like to kind of trace out what the market paths are for the food proso millet going to these various companies or into bulk bins, which obviously is coming in maybe 50-pound bags to stores,
Mm-hmm.
where those come from. But probably someplace in Colorado, but I don't know if you could ever trace it back or if anybody ever wanted to do that. It'd be interesting to see the economy of it, how it's working.
Well,
Yeah,
Leon, would would a wheat mill that that takes the bran off of wheat, could they use proso into flour mixes without a lot of construction or redesign of equipment?
possibly. The problem might be uh, when you grind millet towards flour, there's a lot of moisture in it, and that will cake up on you. And of course, I think they could figure that problem out and take care of that because most of the wheat is wet ground for flour. And so uh, I think there's a way to do that, um, because you look at them and the big ones like what Bob's Red Mill is one who makes flour out of anything. And, they try to have a market and they seem to be successful. So there's ways to do it. And I think in the certain types of grinders, you can adjust to get fine, medium, and coarse. Because I know in the old-fashioned way in a burr grinder, if you had corn, you just wanted to crack it good, and you didn't want to get it too powdery, and
Right.
so you could adjust those plates, and it would make a difference. So there is a possibility that a person could do that, um, and I don't think. And I was trying to think because the University of Nebraska has a real good food um, classroom where they do a lot of this stuff, food preps. They'll grind stuff, try to make stuff out of it. And I was just trying to think if they've ever coarse ground stuff to try to do something a little different, which might be something that
Well,
would work.
the grinding in the food labs, is that always with the hull off?
Generally, in most of the food labs that are experimenting, I think when they begin, they leave it whole because they want the fiber.
Hmm.
And if you grind it more towards the flour state, the fiber is going to be there, but it's going to be pretty small. So you really lose a little bit of the fiber quality. But when you get rid of the hull and just go to the other part, uh, then I think that most of them, because I can't tell you if they all have dehullers or a way to take that hull off.
Yeah,
There's many ways to do it. But in a lab, you can do something that you would never do in production,
right, right.
and have it work. So
Well,
there's things like that.
Don, you mentioned one time about cracked crack millet in a market, a food. I don't know if it's Asian, African food market where they don't leave it whole and they don't make it into flour, but there's a crack portion. Tell us about that, Don.
Right. So in Mali, I was there, and they crack pearl millet and they crack sorghum. So the pearl millet cracked is used in kind of a porridge format when it's pounded down. Usually it's processed by in a wooden mortar and pestle by women. But the flour is used to make a kind of a dough ball thing that's a staple. But the cracked grains can be used in a kind of porridge. The Bomber call it seri. Actually, it's quite good, I found. And then sorghum, I had that cracked in a kind of a yeah, dish like rice, basically. But there's a cultural preference in parts of West Africa for these small grains. So you have fonio there also. There's a whole business about broken rice, which it's a double-edged sword. On the one hand, there may be a preference for it. On the other hand, there's been a dumping of broken rice from as a less expensive way to make money by companies. Basically, the companies are trying to dump this on the West African market to get something out of the residues of the whole grains. So yeah, but it occurred to me that that might be a way of marketing these larger grains. I don't know with proso, it's small enough already that I don't know quite of a benefit of cracking that.
Yeah.
Okay, what
And you
I
may,
guess, go ahead.
but on cracked millet, on cracking the hull, you may be able to do it, but then by the time you get it close to the end product, the hull might fall off.
It will,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
right. You'd have to have it dehulled first,
You would have basically have two halves of hull that would be kind of a messy product, I would guess. And the reason I wanted Don to address this, Leon, is there is so many different ethnic markets across the U.S. that we, as the North American Millets Alliance, have discussed that there seems to be users out there that are importing some of this, but again, the inconsistent quality, especially when you have a semi-processed food grain that can turn rancid in transit, whatever. We would like to supply those kind of markets domestically.
Yeah, I think that was it the New Life sorghum processing uh, outfit in Kansas was marketing cracked sorghum to some ethnic communities in the U.S.
And I think there's possibly a bias from those people because I've been in an airport going through customs and people from I think they were from India or Pakistan were bringing their own rice. And you kind of got in just trying to listen to the conversation that they were told by people who have already come here that the rice in the States is no good. It isn't the same as what they're used to it at home.
Right.
And it's it is somewhat disturbing when you see the customs officials see the rice and there's no papers and well, there goes 40 pounds of rice and they just dump it. And I asked the one guy, I said, so how much of that do you dump in a day? And he said, basically 2 55-gallon barrels a day. And that goes to the dump. They don't do anything with it.
Well, because it doesn't have the phytosanitary certificates, because
Yeah.
in effect they could. I mean, it needs to be inspected. It's different than if it's in a snack bar and already processed. So yeah.
Yeah. So it's and so I think that there might be that bias there because I know a lot of times when the ethnic population comes over, there's a little mistrust of the food, and
Sure.
because they're used to what they are at home, and they'd like to see that. So again, that could be an education point. Try to educate and say, yeah, this is the same as what is grown here. And even at education point in a meeting in a room, prepare their most common food with both and let them taste it. And that would go a long ways.
I think the successful people in those niche markets actually come from that ethnic group and bring local production into their food chain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Anything else you want to bring up that Don, Joni, or I should check into?
No,
No,
this has
I
been
think
fascinating. Jeez.
yeah.
Right,
I
Joni,
just think
thank
you got to get the producers on board with a lot of the stuff. Try to get something in marketing because that's the thing. I don't know if you went back 30 years and figured out how many birds, both birds, parakeets in a cage and wild birds we were feeding, and compare that in 20 years ago to see if we increased, if that market is growing very fast. I think in areas it does, but also there's a lot of places where it doesn't, and that would be one area
Okay.
to get something looked at to see the trends. What can we do to increase those trends?
As you
And
know, that's private data, not publicly gathered, and those companies that are major suppliers know what they've sold over the decades, and you mentioned some of them. So that tends to be private information that's not publicly shared.
yeah, it's tough, and there's some ways to do it, because I've seen some graphs and charts, and yeah, there's no name at the bottom of where it came from.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
true.
and that's the kind of thing that we could perhaps request industries, or excuse me, university study, a study on. Um, all right, this has been just fantastic, Leon. We really, really appreciate your time, and wish you a very successful season.
Yeah,
Well,
thank
thank
you.
you. Thanks for having me, and hope everything goes well for all of you.
All right,
Okay, thank you.
That
perfect.
was
Look forward. Hope we
wonderful.
can
Thanks,
talk another
everybody.
time in the future. But yeah, great. This is great. Thank you again.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right, bye.
Bye.